So this is your hopper tank, entry into that. So you'll be aware of the dangers associated with enclosed space entry. Common causes during accident because of fear, preparations, safety practices while making entry, and during the stay inside enclosed spaces. So what is an enclosed space? So it is defined as a space which is enclosed as it's got limited opening for entry and exit. There is inadequate ventilation. It is not designed for continuous worker occupancy. So you should have a ship specific list of areas where enclosed space entries are there that should be disclosed in public. So your enclosed spaces will have cargo spaces or cargo tanks, fuel tanks, cargo pump room, chain locker, duct keel, interbarrier spaces, DB, ballast tanks, cofferdam, void spaces, and boilers. All are enclosed spaces. Plus, you will have engine crankcases, engine scavengers, receivers, sewage tank and adjacent connected spaces, and any other spaces that are normally kept closed. So what are the hazards associated with enclosed space entry? First is your oxygen is depleted in this area. Second is the hazardous vapors prevalent there. Third is leakage of hazardous substances here, maybe in the cofferdam. Four is insufficient or no ventilation because it's not open. Five is restricted space and mobility. Six is inadequate lighting. So you'll have a lot of accidents you've been having in enclosed spaces. And this occurs whenever your ship crew enters a confined space, which is not properly gas free and has got several pockets of toxic flammable gases. So risk assessment has to be done by a competent officer as your confined spaces are deficient in oxygen. Therefore, it is a life hazard. So the risk assessment should be carried out with what kind of work you have to do, rescue operation, etc. Now your potential hazards are to be identified like toxic gases, which can be done by your dragger tube. List of jobs to be done should be made for the ease of assessment. That is, if welding is to be carried out or some pipe replacement is to be done, then carrying out the work should be quick and easy. Opening and securing has to be done, and the precaution should be taken to check if the opening of enclosed spaces is pressurized or at normal pressure. All fire hazard possibilities should be minimized if hot work is to be carried out. So your next tanks also to be emptied if they are fuel tanks or chemical tanks. So the bulkhead adjacent should also be emptied so that the bulkheads are cleared up on the opposite side. Confined spaces has to be well ventilated prior entry, and that space has to be checked by O2 analyzer for checking your oxygen content, checking with dragger tube for your toxic gases, checking with explosimeter for hydrocarbon gases. When you check with your O2 analyzer, oxygen content should read 20.9 at least by volume. Any percentage less than this is not acceptable and more time for ventilation should be given. Hydrocarbon content should be less than 1% of lower explosive limit. There should be enough lighting and illumination in the enclosed space prior entry, and the practicable lighting should be intrinsically safe. The torches which you carry should be intrinsically safe. A proper work permit to work has to be filled up and safety checklist to be done to prevent any accident which can endanger life. So permit to work has to be valid only for a certain time And if time permits, if the time period expires, a new permit has to be issued, and checklist is again to be filled up. Permit to work has to be checked and permitted by the master in order to work in confined spaces. And duty officer has to be informed before entering the enclosed space. Proper signs and men at work signs should be provided at the required places so that the person should not start any equipment, machinery, or operation in confined space, which will put the life of people there at risk. The checklist has to be signed by the persons involved in entry and also by the competent officer. One person must always be kept standby with radio set whenever where necessary and to communicate with the person inside. And the person may also carry a lifeline with him inside the enclosed space. The person should carry O2 analyzer with him inside so that your oxygen can be monitored, which should be not less than 20.9% at any time. As soon as the level of the oxygen drops, the analyzer should sound alarm and the space should be evacuated quickly. No source of ignition has to be taken inside unless the master competent officer is satisfied. The number of persons entering should be constrained to an adequate number who actually are needed inside for work. Extra persons should not enter there. Your rescue equipment is to be present outside your confined spaces, which will include SCBA, spare charge bottles, Neil Robinson stretcher, resuscitator, medical kit with required antidote for the poison there. Means of hoisting tripod and lifting tackle for an incapacitated person should be available. Now, because of the tripod, we had a casualty in fleet because the tripod was kept in the four-peak store and that was blocked. And the chief officer died because the tripod could not be taken out for more than 40 minutes. So tripod is very, very important also. After finishing your work, when your person is out of the enclosed space, the after work checklist has to be filled up that the work is completed. The permit to work has to be closed after this and the responsible officer notified of the completion of work. So that was your enclosed space entry. We'll take one more topic, will be hot work. Now your hot work can lead to a fire, which you can see here. So it is considered critical for operation on board due to risk involved. It can be cause of explosion, fire, suffocation, equipment failure. Most common reason for accidents caused by hot work when it is carried out in enclosed spaces because you have flammable gases there, or the adjacent tank has flammable material, or the component itself will have toxic gases in the various pockets. So seafarers often fail to follow the basic hot work procedure when carrying out these procedures, leading to unfortunate accidents which are fatal. So you require good training, safe working practices, and you have to adhere to safety procedures so that your probability of your occurrence of accidents is reduced. So refer to your hot work precaution matrix before starting the job. A work planning meeting should be held and a formal or informal risk assessment to be carried out at the workplace. A responsible officer who is not directly involved in hot work must be designated to ensure that the plan is followed. The atmosphere of hot work area should be tested and should be found to be less than 1% LEL. Firefighting equipment must be arranged and kept ready for use. That is, your hoses to be pressurized and kept ready for use. Fire detectors in the space should be properly working. Measures should be taken to prevent scattering of sparks. So spark shelters should be there. Confirm that no other work is being carried out because that may cause leak of combustible gas or oil. Arrangements for placing required watchmen for monitoring hot work area and adjacent areas should be made. Provision should be made for sufficient ventilation and lighting. Evacuation routes or emergency exits and passageways should be properly designated or secured. The conditions of tools and equipment should be checked and found satisfactory. Protective and personnel involved in work should be provided with appropriate personal PPE and danger indications, safety ropes installed. Insulation of the equipment to be checked properly prior to use. Areas where the fire is to be directly applied must be clearly marked. All crew engaged in hot work should be trained and clear instructions and precautions to be observed should be clearly distributed to all. Measures should be taken to prevent fire from coming in contact with gas, residual oil, sludge, dangerous and combustible materials. Confirm that no combustible material is present on the other side of the bulkhead, deckhead, or division on which your hot work is to be done. The section to be worked on should be disconnected or disassembled from the related pipelines and valves by cold work. Cold work means you involved brass tools to remove that nuts. You're not cutting. It's cold work. You're just opening that nuts. And the open-ended section must be sealed off. Safety of the pipeline must be confirmed where applicable. Safety of enclosed compartments must be confirmed in accordance with procedures for entry into enclosed spaces. All crew engaged in work within the enclosed spaces must be provided with portable lighting apparatus. Gas detection in spaces where there is danger of combustible gas emissions, that is your air pipe tops, areas near manholes, other openings and the like, and in the vicinity of hot work area must be carried out prior work and should continue periodically during work. Now, what are the precautions for gas welding and cutting? So secure your gas cylinder in vertical position and it should be handled with utmost care and always be secured there in the position, vertical position, even if it is empty or full. Full and empty cylinders to be segregated and marked clearly. So never store oxygen and acetylene cylinders together in one space. Keep them separate in well ventilated spaces. Ensure that when not in use, the cap should always be on them. Keep grease and oil away. Control valves and fittings should be kept free from oil and grease. Never operate cylinder valves and parts with oily or greased hands. Ensure flame arresters are properly fitted. Ensure that non-return valves and flame arresters are fitted in acetylene and oxygen cylinders. One flame arrestor is normally fitted in the low pressure side of regulator near the cylinder and other near the torch. So you have to keep the grease and oil away. So the control and fitting should be free of grease and oil. And never operate cylinder valves and the parts with greasy hands and all. Ensure flame arresters. See, there are difference between flame screen and flame arrestor. Flame screen means a mesh which is basically not allowing the spark or the flame to pass the sparks to go through. That is the flame screen. Flame arresters are basically materials like ceramic which reduce the heat content of the flame and so the flame will not go out of that area. That is flame arrestor. So ensure that non-return valves and flame arresters are fitted in acetylene oxygen cylinder lines. One flame arrestor is normally fitted in low pressure side of regulator near the cylinder and other near the torch. So keep the pressure of oxygen higher when performing gas welding. Then that should be higher than acetylene to avoid acetylene gas going back in oxygen line. So handle the acetylene with care. So it should not be used for welding at a pressure exceeding 1 bar of atmospheric gauge, as it is liable to explode in the even in absence of air when under excessive pressure. Now, when you have a backfire, the first priority should be to close the oxygen valve and immediately close the acetylene valve. No operation is to be performed under the cause of backfire. So in case of flashback or explosion of gas pipes, first action must be to isolate the cylinder valves for both the cylinders and the action further should be as per ship's fire drill. So there should be proper connections between the hose and blowpipe, and between hoses should be securely fixed with fittings so that you comply with regularly standard. Keep a steady watch. A regular watch to be kept on the temperature of acetylene cylinder. If the temperature is rising, then same can be flashback or explosion situation for taking action. Manifold hose connections, including inlet and outlet connections, should be such that the hose cannot be interchanged between fuel gases and oxygen manifolds and headers. Any hose which has got flashback must be replaced with a new one. So while performing the job, the hoses should be laid properly and kept out of any moving machinery, sharp corners, high temperature areas. Ensure that they are not dangled, knitted, or tipped over. Only soap water to be used for direction of leak from hoses or regulator arrangement. Never use sealing tape on metal joining material to prevent leak between metal to metal gas joints. With an oxygen cylinder, this could result in initiation of metal oxygen fire. Never try to over tight any nut or regulator connection or cylinder valve spindle to stop the leak. This can lead to damage. Now for the maintenance part, only special tools to be cleaning any clogging in the blowpipe. Isolate complete system prior to performing any maintenance. Never attempt repairs on pressurized oxyacetylene equipment, nor carry out any unauthorized modification on the hot work equipment. So blowpipe should be ignited with friction igniter or stable flame generator. Avoid using lighter as sudden flame, as the blowpipe can hit the lighter body and explodes. Oxygen should never be used for ventilation. Cooling purposes should be for blowing dust off the surface or clothes. Discard length of hose which has suffered any flashback, because that hose will be rejected. Make sure that before carrying out any kind of hot work, the hot work checklist and risk assessment form should be duly filled. Do not forget to follow all safety procedures while carrying out such jobs in enclosed spaces. So that was your hot work. So we थोड़ा video देख लेते हैं so that you know
Yes, sir.
what